My name is Randy Melzi, and I'm a Senior Director at the America Society Council of the Americas in New York. My colleague Nancy Anderson is the Senior Director of the America Society Council of the Americas in Miami, and she'll be acting as MC. I would like to welcome you all to Inspiring Women to Lead, the second Women's Hemispheric Network Forum in Miami. And I would like to thank Greenberg Traurig, Patty, Alex, and all of your team for sponsoring the series for 3 years and for hosting us in Miami for the second time. The Women's Hemispheric Network started in New York in 2012 with Michelle Bachelet, who was then the head of UN Women and is now the president of Chile, and with Margarita Zavala, who was at the time the First Lady of Mexico, but had also been a Congresswoman. And we have had 17 events in 8 cities with 1,000 women. Our objective is to convene women between 22 and 35 years in private events to hear the stories of successful women of all ages, backgrounds, industries, and countries. And we hope that through listening to these stories, young women will be inspired to stay in the workforce and strive to reach leadership positions in any field that they choose. This is our first event of 2015, and I invite any of you who will be in Sao Paulo on March 19th to join us in Sao Paulo. We have 3 confirmed speakers, and we're thrilled. And we'll also have a program in Mexico and in Buenos Aires. And this year, the changes that we want to make is we want to have more men. So I see that there are a couple. Thank you for joining us. And we also want to have larger events so that we can touch more women. And of course, we'll have our 4th annual meeting in New York in October. I would like to share 3 personal thoughts. The first thing, I would like to recommend a book called The Confidence Code that was written last year by Katty Kay, who's the head of BBC News in Washington, and Claire Shipman. And what they did was talk to a number of scientists who've done studies on confidence in women to understand why we're different from men. And the good news is that we can learn to be more confident. It's a great read. I read it on the airplane a number of months ago, and I got it on my phone if you want to see what it looks like. The second thing is that last year we had Gillian Tett with us, and she said something that Sheryl Sandberg wrote in Lean In, which is that the march up the corporate ladder is really more like a walk around the jungle gym. You go up, down, and sideways. And in my own experience, what I've always said to myself is what Churchill said, which is never, never, never give up. No matter what happens, hang in there. We were talking to Betty and Rosario about that. Rosario said that this morning. Thank you, Rosario. And the third thing is something that was brought to my attention this week by one of my colleagues, and that's something that appeared in the New York Magazine, a study by Harvard that says that the reason why we're not progressing as women in the workforce is not because of our foibles and shortcomings as women, but rather because the culture is holding us back. And one of my colleagues who's also involved in this initiative in New York, who's a Colombian journalist, keeps telling me, she's been saying for about a year now, it's the culture, it's the culture, it's the culture. So the only way we can change that culture is if all of us stay in the workforce. And so I've talked for a very long time, and now I'd like to introduce Patty, who needs no introduction. Patty is the Vice President and Secretary of Greenberg Traurig. She's a wife, she's a mother of 4, she's involved in the community, she's a passionate mentor, and she is an inspiration and a role model to us all. Patty.
Randy's obviously a very good friend and will be getting her PR check later. Well, I'm very excited to be here. This is a cause that's very important to my heart, but it's also our firm is very committed to gender parity. We've been working with the gender parity groups with Susan, actually, the president of the Council of the Americas, in Davos, and it was from that Susan had the idea to put this together. I've had the opportunity to travel with Randy and Susan overseas, and it is amazing the effect that they've had and how in such a short amount of time period they've been able to have such a large impact and in the connectivity on a number of different circles, both in creating networks for women, but also focusing on the younger talent that's already in the workforce and helping them to mentor, to stay in the workforce, and to be able to further their career paths and balance their work life. So thank you, Randy, for everything you do for this, because it is really important. It is my distinct pleasure today to introduce Alexandra Villoch. She is the president and publisher of the Miami Herald Media Company. She is responsible for all the operations in the Miami Herald Media Group, which are quite substantial. She is the first female publisher in the Herald's 110-year history, and the third Hispanic in that role. She previously served as the vice president and held several senior titles for the Herald. She is a finance and sales veteran, a self-proclaimed news junkie who loves reading the printed paper but recognizes the importance of digital content. I myself still do both. She is active in civic affairs, working on the executive committee of the Beacon Council and as its former chairwoman, as well as on the board of governors of the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce and on the board of directors of the Miami-Dade Community College Foundation. She's a past chair of the Big Brothers and Big Sisters. She's found time to do all of this while raising herself a successful female daughter who's an attorney. And this is a huge responsibility. And now with everything going on with Cuba, I can imagine you're a little busy these days. So thank you for taking the time to be here today when the U.S. government published its regulations last night at midnight. So thank you for welcome, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning. As an aside, yes, when the regulations at OFAC published and they had the hearing yesterday morning, I was busy. I'm an ex-banker at some point, but it's been a while, and so some folks in the newsroom were coming, what does this mean about correspondent bank, and what does it exactly mean? I go, it's been a long time, let me call some of my connections, and this is where a good woman's network is. I have somebody who's a COO in a bank, and you take a quick look at this, make sure we're interpreting this correctly so we can get the right information out. So that speaks to the power of networks, that within the newsrooms has learned that they come to me that my Rolodex is pretty good, and that we can really quickly reach somebody that can confirm information. We live in exciting times, and there's no better town than Miami to be doing that, to be in the news business. It's an honor to be with you here today, and I really want to thank you for inviting me. It's great at this point in my career to be able to look back and say, what have my learnings been? I want to thank the American Society and the Council of the Americas to allow me to be part of this second Hemispheric Forum. Making sure that we groom and retain women leaders is of critical importance. We need to, as companies, to be successful in today's world, to really ensure that we have diversity of views in our companies. And that starts with a diversity of gender and a representation that is reflected of the communities that we serve. If not, we cannot do the best at our businesses if we don't have that at the table. And for us, some of those of us that are at senior leadership levels, it means that we have an even greater burden to make sure that we retain young talent and that we don't lose young talent because we don't provide a forum for them. It's terrific to see such a cross-section of women and a couple of men sprinkled in this morning here. Your accomplishments and your vision are what's going to help continue to shape our communities in the years to come. I've been blessed through my career to work for companies that really were committed to ensuring diversity and to foster the development of women and minorities. Maybe it was by accident, maybe it was because my principles made me seek out companies that had a match to my values. And in some cases, I sort of pushed the envelope as well and sort of ignored the reality that in most positions in my career, whether it was in aviation or banking, particularly, most times I was in the conference room where I was the only woman at the table at the time. The McClatchy Company, which is the parent company of the Miami Herald Media Group, and has had initiatives to help women leaders for years. The Miami Herald Media Company stands apart from most U.S. media companies, not only because we've got a female president and publisher, but Our two executive editors of our two newsrooms, the Miami Herald and the Global Herald, are both female, Miriam Marquez and Miriam Marquez and Minnie Marquez, two Marquezas, as we call them. Our high-profile editorial board is led by an African-American woman that is a seasoned newspaper veteran, Nancy Ankrum. In addition, our CFO and our VP of HR are also women. The men around the table are. And they got to these positions because they earned their way there, but we also made sure to foster and create an environment where we could retain that talent, and they felt that they had a voice. It's a pivotal time for us to be in media, in the transition that is happening in media. And the face of leadership is changing as rapidly as the business itself. Within McClatchy, within 30 properties, almost 50% of the publishers are female. And it's about the same level, it's 46%. And so it really is a distinctly different company in the kind of focus it has about recruiting the best talent and that diversity of voice at the table. As a company here in this area, we look to hire, retain, and promote, and to make sure that we're reflecting the community we serve. We could not do a good job of reporting out, whether it's in print or digital, if we are not a reflection of the community. We believe and support the talents of young professionals. One of the things that we developed 5 years ago was a very successful mentoring program. And mentoring can be formal and informal, and I've been a beneficiary of both. But we've got this program that is formal. It runs a year at a time, and we partner our up-and-coming young talent with seasoned professionals and more experienced media professionals. It is cross-departmental, because one of the things that we want to do is create within a company. We've got about a little bit over 600 employees, the ability for people to connect across departments and create resources and create a larger informal network. We feel that you're going to get somebody within your own division or department is going to be there to help you. But learning, if you're in the newsroom, learning what somebody on the press does, or somebody in distribution, or somebody in sales does, all of a sudden we get a lot of ideas that come out because of that. It's broadened the skills and the knowledge, and the mentors have learned as much as the mentees as a result. We make sure that we balance our mentee class every year to reflect that. But we also, one of the things that we've done as a company that I'm very proud of is that we work to make sure that we have a lot of flexibility in the marketplace with creating flexible schedules, particularly with young women, to create work-from-home schedules to make sure that new mothers, we can help them transition back into the workplace after having a new baby. Heidi mentioned, I have a 30-year-old daughter. I have to admit, the way that I survived and got forward, I had a living nanny, okay? And my mother lived 6 blocks away. If you don't have a support system, when my daughter was born, on Sunday nights, I'd be jumping on an aircraft to Latin America on Sunday night, and I wouldn't come back till that flight from Buenos Aires at 5 in the morning on Friday morning. The only way I survived to be able to do that and progress in my career is I had a support network. And it's our obligation to make sure that within our respective companies we create a flexible work schedule and an ability not to lose, not to have someone say, you know what, I can't cope. I don't have a network. I don't have a mother or a grandmother to help out. That flexibility, I live with one of my directors that for 1 year she said, you know what, it's really important. I have twins, and this year I'm the grandmother, and I want to go pick them up from school and be the carpool. Get out of here, go. You know what? We're connected to these little devices 24/7 anyways. If you're a good performer, you don't really have to be physically in front of us to perform. And I'd rather retain you. And guess what? I don't know about you, but the fact that my companies gave me that flexibility that I needed to never miss one of my daughter's swim meets or track meets, it wasn't important to my daughter, it was important to me that I didn't want to miss it. I worked harder as a result, and I gave more as a result of that flexibility. So it's the right thing to do this, but it's simply good business. And in businesses such as ours, we need to ensure that we reflect that diversity of the community to serve our readers effectively and to reflect and serve our advertisers that support the business model that we have. So it's good business and making that connection between doing the right thing and good business is critical for us to make sure that we get that message across. So a little bit about my background, because people sort of kind of glossed over my background and they're going banking and airlines, and now I'm in media and sales. My background and my history is a little bit like many of you. As an immigrant, I was born in Cuba, a little bit non-traditional. My parents came from Cuba with me when I was 2 years old. We lived in Miami briefly. We didn't stay here, but we moved to Puerto Rico, then back to Miami, then to Guatemala, then to Lake Charles, Louisiana, where we were the only Hispanics in town. Fort Worth, Texas, where somebody approached me and said, all sorts of different things. This is why I love Miami. Peru, California, London, and my father was involved in big major construction projects. We were like army brats. Every 2 years my mother would pack up the house and we would move somewhere else. I was the only child until the age of 6, and maybe this is part of my impact. My mother gets very upset when she hears me speak because she says, "What am I, chopped liver? You only talk about your father." But I think my father, for the first 6 years of my life, thought he wasn't going to really have a son. And when I was 5, I had steel-toed boots, and I would spend my weekends going with him to his projects. And I would, if I wanted to spend time with my dad, I learned how to operate a power drill, and I know an Allen wrench from a screwdriver. And my husband was very impressed that I came with a toolbox that was better equipped than his. I got married. I'm my drill's better. Throughout all the years of travel and growing up, Miami was always our home. This was the constant. So I came here to Miami to finish my last year of high school in an American school and live with my aunt and uncle that lived here in Miami. And I never left. The little sidebar is I had gotten accepted to Georgetown, and about 3 weeks before I set the ship off to Washington, my aunt and my mother stopped me in the living room crying, and they said, "Why do you need to leave? You do not love your family. We wash your clothes. You have food here. What is wrong?" Within 3 weeks, I enrolled in Miami-Dade College. Went there, and then went on to UM undergrad. And for my master's, my mother reminds me that I have done very well, and I did not need to leave. Fast forward many years later, when my daughter was getting ready to go off to college, my mother said, "Does she need to leave?" And I said, "Mother, she's been accepted to Princeton. We're not having this discussion." It took some getting used to it, but I think we can all relate in some way. And I started with my daughter when she was in 6th grade. You will leave. You will leave to go to college. You will leave Florida. It's staying in Florida is not really changing the Miami experience. And you will just go, the requirements were you had to stay east of the Mississippi, and wherever you went had to be a single plane ride, no connecting flights. I have to say that when I graduated from college, I did not know what I wanted to be. I've always envied people. How many of you are either an attorney or in whatever, always knew from whatever, 1st grade, this is what I'm going to do with my life. Not me. I knew what I hated, I knew what I didn't like, but that left a lot of, wide open area. My career path first took me to banking, then to work for the airlines, to work for Eastern Airlines, then back to banking, just a couple of blocks away with what was Southeast Bank. I was VP of Financial Planning, and then back to the airlines again when United Airlines bought the Latin America routes from Pan Am and opened a hub here for Latin America. I think I met many of you that are sitting here smiling back at that time. Up until that time, I had always been in the financial side of the house. I had been financial controller, CFO, in that side, whether it was in banking or airlines. While at United, I made the jump from finance to operations and went to run the operations at Miami International Airport. At that time, United had a huge hub for Latin America here, had about 5,000 employees, about 99% of them unionized. And I stepped into a position running the airport that had eaten up through 3 men that had all been had vast number of years in operations, and they could not make that hub work. It was the worst performing hub at United Airlines. And I raised my hand and I said, I've always wanted to, when I grow up, go run Miami Airport. And they said, sure, go. Let's see how long she lasts. And I think that when people ask me about my path, I have to say that at every point in my career, I took the chance. I took the chance at something new, something that would push me out of my comfort zone, something that was going to, at least for a year, not have me be bored. I have to always be challenged. And I always raised my hand, I asked for the project, I asked for the assignment. I was not sort of worried about what the job description was or the title. And what I found was that always led to a promotion, into a new opportunity, into a path that I had never really anticipated or even dreamed of. 14 years ago, I had the great fortune to make yet another jump into media and sales. And when I joined the Miami Herald Media Company. And so you wonder and saying, how do you make that jump? You know, you got a finance background, you've been running an airport, and now you're media and sales. A little detour is one of the things that I've done always in my career is get involved with my community. My parents taught me that we've been blessed. We've been blessed to be in a country that opened the doors and gave us huge opportunities, and that you give back. You give back, and we each give back in different ways. And early on, I became involved with United Way, the Beacon Council, which is Miami-Dade County's economic development agency, the Chamber of Commerce, in all sorts of task force and initiatives. My passion for kids led me to work for 10 years on the board of Big Brothers Big Sisters. I was doing good, but at the same time, I was meeting and connecting with people that I would not normally meet in the course of my work. And it was pushing me to see and connect in different ways. Throughout all that process, part of it is also when you meet people, ask questions. Don't ever be afraid to ask questions. What do you do? What does this all mean? That curiosity about people and getting involved outside of the workplace was really what helped me uncover opportunities and friendships that have helped connect and push my career along. So how did I make the jump to the Miami Herald Media Company? Mentors can be many different things. It can be formal, like I described at the beginning, or they can be informal. And back when I was at Southeast Bank, I became friends with someone that many of you may know, Robin Ryder. I kept in touch with her through the years. And periodically she would call me, and she would say, I want you to serve on this committee. I want you to join the Wages Coalition, which was the Welfare Reform Board. I want you to get on the Annenberg Foundation board. Sometimes, frankly, I have to tell you, I would say, yes, Robin. I wasn't sure what benefits it might have at that point to my career, but I trusted her. And over time, she exposed me to people and opportunities that I would have missed. So I do say one of the things is seek out your personal mentor, someone that you can trust. Doesn't have to be in your field. Because I was involved with United Way, I got the opportunity to work with the then president of the Miami Herald. Robin, at that point, was the head of HR at the Miami Herald. And Joe Natoli approached me after a United Way board meeting and said, why don't you come work for us? I said, Joe, what do I know about media? I don't know anything about newspapers. And he said, I've seen you in action. I've seen you in action here at the United Way. You know Miami, and that is the hardest thing. You can't teach that. You can't teach someone how to understand what Miami is and what does this place mean, right? And he says, and you know how to sell because you've been convincing all these companies to run all these campaigns through the United Way. So just come and talk to us. Within like 2 weeks, I had talked to Alberto, I had talked to Joe, I had been through the whole round, and I'm like going, I had at that point two options. I could stay within the travel industry, and if not, over at United Airlines in the cruise business, something like that. I had a couple of opportunities at that point. Or go in a totally different direction. I said, well, I have operations, I have finance, I don't know anything about sales and marketing. Well, let me go in this direction. What's the worst that could happen? I've always looked at the road less traveled, and the rest is kind of history. One of the questions that I get asked often in my new role is, how are women leaders different than men? And I would say, a lot has been written about leadership styles. I'm not a professor. I would say that what has served me well in my entire career is something that my first boss told me. He said, no matter what you do, be true to yourself. Because people see through that. You cannot adopt somebody else's management style. You have to reflect who you are. Because people see through that. So that's first and foremost, be true to yourself. And then the other part is, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to fail. It's the second part of that. I think that one of the things that, as I look back on my career, is that we feel a need to be perfect. I I think that that's one differentiator from men, is women always feel we need to be perfect. And in today's world, I would say that perfection is the enemy of innovation. Perfection is the enemy of being first to market. And perfection is the enemy of leading the way. It's taken me a long time to realize that sometimes good is good enough, and that pursuing perfection is a waste of my time and the precious time and resources of my organization and my staff. I can't tell you how many times I lost nights of sleep rewinding this tape in my head of I should have said this at this presentation, or I had used the wrong word. Mistakes that only I saw, that nobody else even realized. And I think one of the benefits of getting to this point in my life is to realize that you shouldn't sweat the small stuff, and that most things are small stuff. And that most times nobody else realized the mistake, and just let it go. I still struggle with that, by the way. It's not that I now at least see it, but I still struggle with it. I think that women, we have a tremendous talent and an advantage of being able to tackle a multitude of projects and tasks at one time, while never losing focus on what's important. We're mothers, we're wives, we're daughters, we run our households as well as our businesses. We know how to make lists in our sleep. And it's an incredibly valuable skill set in today's world, because none of us are doing one job any longer. And the speed at which all our businesses are changing is remarkable. So the ability to juggle not only a dozen balls, but 3 dozen balls at one time is critical. And this is why we need to make sure that we keep women leaders in our organizations, because of that ability. We have a keen ability to connect the dots. We have the ability to listen and interpret information, and we realize that that connection in most cases creates unique business opportunities. It's about connecting people and information and realizing that sometimes 2 + 2 can equal 6, and you just need to pay attention, listen, and ask questions, and make sure that you push yourselves outside of your daily comfort zone. I've been asked if there was one particular opportunity that stands out that was like a major break for me, or there was maybe an opportunity that I failed to seize and run with. I would say that all of my career decisions were guided by one very simple decision that I made. And that was because I grew up moving around so much from place to place. When I had my daughter, I wanted her to grow up in one place. I wanted her to go to one school, and that her friends from 1st grade were going to be her friends in 12th grade. And to have lifelong friends, and today that is true. She was a 12-year lifer at Carrollton, and those friends from 1st grade are still at 30 her best friends. I turned down many opportunities. I turned down offers to go work in New York, in San Francisco, in Houston, and Chicago. Could those be perceived as lost opportunities or things that I failed to seize? No, because I was being guided by something that helped shape each of those decisions. They were tempting, I'm not going to lie. It always feels great to be courted. But my personal decision of what kind of lifestyle I wanted to have for my daughter carried more weight than any potential career opportunity. So it brings me to what I think is very important for each of us, is to sometimes sit down and do what I call my list of non-negotiables. It was non-negotiable for me to uproot my daughter. And I had positions that required me to travel. I'd be traveling probably 50% of my time. But my home base was Miami, and her life did not get uprooted as a result. And it gave me the peace of mind to be able to tackle all sorts of jobs as a result. What are some of my other non-negotiables? Sometimes they vary over time. Sometimes they're the core essence of who you are. Integrity. I would never work for a company that didn't share my same values about integrity and commitment to the community. And I also knew that I had to work for someone that I respected. My boss didn't have to be someone I liked. I may not want to ever go have drinks with them, but it had to be someone that I respected them for their values, their integrity, and their intellect. I had to feel that every time I walked in their office, I was going to learn something more. Okay? So I think having clarity as to what your non-negotiables are at whatever point you are in your career makes decisions so much easier, because then you don't look back and say, I should have done that. No, if you made that decision guided by those principles and those non-negotiables, you just keep moving forward. Much has been written about work-life balance. I think somebody said said it even here this morning. I've come to the conclusion that, work-life balance, people tend to think that it's a seesaw and it's perfect balance. Well, remember that a seesaw goes up and down. And my sense is that work-life balance is sometimes that seesaw's way up on work and your home life and your personal life is like nowhere. And sometimes you say it's my health, it's my family until it comes to work, and that's what that balance is. It varies at different points in time and it shifts in direction. I think getting clarity on that you can't really do it all because we do need sleep, and we're much better when we do sleep, right? Because coffee can only get us so far. Is that not listening to that story, and much has been written about it, but sometimes again going back to that, we need to be perfect. Let it go. And I think that the other thing that has been key in my career is travel. Yes, I grew up traveling, and maybe that's where the travel bug came. And my mother approached that everywhere we lived, while we were living there, we were in Guatemala. We went up and down all of Central America, exploring every ruin. When we were in Peru, we took trains. We went this. It was Machu Picchu. It was Cusco. It was this. No stone unturned about seeing what was around us. Maybe that's where it started. Then I went and worked for 2 airlines. And I got to tell you, travel was cheap, and talk about being addicted to it. For a while there, I would fly to New York to get my hair cut because it was $6 up and $6 back. The cab from LaGuardia was more expensive than the flight. So that kind of hooks you into that. But travel takes you out of your comfort zone, and it helps expand the mind. And there are, in fact, studies that show that people that travel, especially foreign travel, have a better way of processing change and disruption than people who don't. You have the ability, and it's been proven, to innovate and imagine more than people that don't travel. And those are key differentiators for success in today's business world. I love to travel. I love to meet new people, eat new foods, and experience a different perspective. It helps me visualize and see issues in a different way. And then when I come back, something that seemed impossible all of a sudden has a different frame and focus to it. So I ask you, what's on your bucket list? Is it India? Is it Myanmar? Cambodia? Africa? I've been to Africa twice, and I'm ready to go back again to Uganda to see the gorillas. Don't be afraid to travel. In today's world, especially with what's going on in the last couple of weeks, it sometimes scares us, and it makes our world a very small place because we say, I can't do that. And if we do that, then the bad guys win. So travel, and I say travel not as a tourist. I have a little globe that they gave me that sits in my office with a saying from St. Augustine that says, the world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page. We live in a volatile world where change and disruption are constants. In our own company, change and disruption has led us to diversify our products and services tremendously over the last few years. And while our company has been serving our community since 1903, the speed of change that we are living with today is, I can't even describe it. It's a constantly changing world. We're committed to being the most credible source of news, information, and marketing solutions for our community, whether it's on print, online, your smartphone. We're constantly evolving and innovating, and we offer our content platforms. Right now, we have about 9 million unique visitors a month to our websites. 54% of that traffic is coming from Facebook and Twitter. Social media is transforming all of our businesses in one way or another. It opens up all sorts of dilemmas, as you saw last week with the cybersecurity, with the breach in CENTCOM, because we don't control those platforms. They're not inside systems. But it is what it is, and we all need to figure out how we engage in them, because that's the next generation who lives on those platforms through social media. Today, we offer 5 different newspapers in 2 languages, and in the digital space, as I said, we have 9 websites with 9 million monthly unique visitors, 47 different interactive apps for tablets, e-readers, and other mobile devices, 27 email newsletters. We have HCP Aboard, which is our custom publishing company that produces over 88 different publications for clients such as Baptist, Marriott, the Greater Miami Visitors and Convention Bureau, the Beacon Council, Volaris Airlines out of Mexico, Cayman Airways, and other destination books such as for Jamaica, Bermuda, and so on. So we're very varied. We also seize the opportunity here, 0 minutes, for the luxury market, and we created Indulge Magazine. We're reaching non-subscribers as well in different ways. So we're constantly looking to how to adapt and meet the needs of our readers. One question. In today's environment, it's very volatile, and I think that we need you as women leaders to be able to address and make sure that we are all successful in our businesses. So thank you very, very much for your time today. I have time for one question, they say back there, if you have anything, but thank you very much. The future of Miami is in your hands, so stick to it. Thank you.
I have a question. So you talk a lot about women growing within their different industries and communities. How do you see women in entrepreneurship and women in like larger company organizations, that balance? Like, what's their different roles or the same?
It's the same.
It's the same.
It becomes harder because the smaller the company, the truth is a small entrepreneur, your hours and your time and your ability to go outside, you don't have anybody to delegate something to. So it's more of a challenge, and you say, can I spend the time to go to the chamber? How can I connect? I would say we need to find ways. Sometimes things can be more informal. It can be a phone call. It can be who do you reach out, but just trying to figure out how you can create a network. Because particularly in a small company, it can be very lonely if you don't have someone to bounce off ideas. And there's a lot of organizations. There is PCI, which is a group of women that help business women, small and large, with their business plans and stuff like that. There's a lot of different opportunities and ways to connect, but yeah, it's a harder balance. It's a challenge.
It's a bigger seesaw.
Huh?
It's a bigger seesaw.
Yeah, bigger seesaw.
Thank you very much, Ally.